space. And that had to be done to do that. And the city did that. So I think a lot of this is we're finding alternative ways to finance this, but this is something I really think we need to come up with. We have had offers. We had somebody ready to come in to give us the land to do this in a central location. And that morning, within an hour or so, this person decided not to do it. It would have been a perfect location. But anyway, that's what it was. So I think I want to know. I'm the only person in this room who's been affected by having their child move to another school. My wife and I bought a house 3 doors down from Virginia High School on the other side of the road here, on the other side of Long Crescent. So our daughter could come to this school. Our daughter was moved to Van Pelt. She had an excellent vacation there, and I'm not putting down Van Pelt. That was where her program was moved, and we were delighted that she had it. But you cannot imagine the inconvenience of if there's a doctor's appointment, if she's sick at school or something, getting to her after-school care and so on. So yeah, that was a real problem for us, and I think that's a problem that everybody's going to face. And I think that everybody needs to realize that. And yes, it's 3 miles, but 3 miles from here to Van Pelt takes about 15 minutes. It's depending on what traffic is and which way you're going. Is there a train coming from down there, around the other side of Euclid? What's going on? Is there an accident on the interstate? Whatever's happened. I think instead of 3 miles, I would like to see a school within 1 mile of where you live. That's doable. Like I said, 3 blocks for me, but I think 1 mile, that's very doable. 3 miles in this city can mean a whole lot. So I would like to see a more central area. I understand Van Pelt, that is a perfect area to put the school. We own it. It's no expense to the city. It's plumbed. It's everything's up there. It's going to take Suncrest Park probably and a whole lot of other things, but and that we haven't looked into yet. We haven't even talked to people about the impact of traffic and infrastructure and so on. Those are other things that we need to do, I think, before we enter into any sort of a statement, say this is what we're going to do. We need to look at all of that. But yeah, I think you need to make yourselves heard. If you're listening on the Bearcat radio tonight or whatever, you need to make your opinion heard. You're the taxpayers. I think it's been a long, long time that a lot of you have seen us. We owe a lot of money in this city. And you didn't really vote on that money. And you really didn't have any input into that money. You've got input into this money. And so if you know somebody with some property, for heaven's sakes, get them to step up, do whatever. But anything at all that you can do. But yeah, I agree with Mr. Shanks on that one too. Thank you.
More comments from the audience?
Sorry, I have 2 more questions for you. Who gets to make the final decision of where the school will be built? Is that the taxpayers, the school board, or the city council? And also, will reports be available to the public on the different properties, how much it will cost to get them up to date to build, et cetera?
Okay, so PPA is a funny process. So the location that we're going to build the school will be a school board decision. Okay, but now let me put an asterisk beside that. Before anything can ever be done on this project, the first piece of dirt can be moved. City council has to approve it. So it is that's something also very unique about PPEA. The school board is going through all these public hearings. We're doing all this work, all this legwork on the front side, trying to get everything arranged. We can do it all. We can pick a contractor. We can pick a team. We can get a plan. We can go through that whole process. The final thing that has to happen is we have to get city council to approve it. So that answer your question. And those documents you're asking about are available right now. Every piece of paper that we have that deals with this. It is because we've posted our presentations. I don't know if these presentations have been posted or not, but we can do that very easily. Yes, and if you give Miss Jones your email, we will you won't even have to go search for them. We'll send them to you. I can tell you, regardless of what I think ought to happen, this board wants to be transparent. This board wants to get input from the public, and they want this whole process. And so whether I try to hide something or not, they're not going to let me, because they want this process to be transparent and open.
It would be nice if there was a website to go to, readily available, that we can go to the website and it would be updated so we could see the progress that you made.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, that's
I
excellent.
think that's a great idea.
If it's not too confidential, why did the person back out of donating the property?
It's too confidential.
We'll have to, and I don't know. We were going to have a discussion. I don't know if it was going to be a donation or a good price, but yeah, and that's certainly it's yeah. Thank you.
I'd just like to add to Mr. Shank's concerns. I feel like I owe it to him. I try to take my emotion out of some of these decisions. I walked to Washington Lee and home. I walked to Virginia Middle School and home. I walked to Virginia High School and home. I'm going to back up. I ran to Virginia Middle School because if you were late, Mr. Shanks, you had to go see him. I'm not going to tell you what happened when you got there. But anyway, ideally, Sunset Hill over there behind Sullins, to me, is a perfect location. It's right off 381. You've got entrance there from, was that North Bristol Baptist Church, right next to Valley Dale. But it's not available.
Steve,
I hate the idea. Go ahead.
I would add, when we looked in 2011, when you were talking, we were having hearings and talking about 2 elementary school models. One of the visions of this goal was to have the whole school system, eventually, the whole school system on that Sullins property. And we've got a 100-year-old middle school. We got a high school was built in the 50s. If we was going to build a middle school, we were going to build big enough for all the elementary to be there. Was a thought process. I mean, that property was big enough to eventually put Bristol, Virginia schools in one central location for every building. That was our dream, I guess you might say. But the property is just not available, and we've thoroughly looked into it this time around. I mean, it'd be a very good piece of property for our city, for our school system to be able to make progress for. Build buildings where you can add on to as you need, and that's where this process. That was one of the key locations when we were looking at doing a 2-school model.
Steve, I know you're not through. I want to add, in 1975 or 6 or whatever it was, when
Some of you might not know this, but in 1975 or 76, when Sullins College closed, Bristol, Virginia school system could have bought the hill that Sullins College was on, plus the Camp Sequoia on the lake, for an even $1 million. It didn't happen. And I'd be out there skiing.
But I just lost my train of thought. But anyway, I just think we've
You're talking about running to school because he was
running to school because I was scared. Yeah. But anyway, and then actually something that stood out to me. My feeling has always felt like a school needs to be in each community, and I hate to see I would hate to see Stonewall close, Highland View close, and Washington Lee. What happened? These communities don't have a school in their community anymore. But someone brought up a good point. I think we were at Van Pelt, and a gentleman stood up and said, Steve, he said, I've had 7 kids that I've raised and sent through schools. And he said, things are different now. He said, I take my kids to Johnson City for soccer lessons, and I run them to Abingdon for this, and I run them here to there. He said, what's the big deal, about going up to Van Pelt? And it did kind of make me think. It kind of made me feel a little bit better if that's, what happens. Things are. Yeah, that's true.
I think one thing, too, that will be key for this area, I mean, it is different for every area of the city. Even though it's only 13 square miles, there are different needs. I think that we will have to have a good plan for public transportation for families who don't have reliable transportation, regardless if it's at one of the King Mill Pike properties, if it's at the property at Lavina, or if it's at Van Pelt. We'll have to work very closely with city transit in order to be able to provide transportation to wherever the new site is, because Miss May will tell you, a lot of our families walk to Washington Lee, and we will have to have a plan to address that. But I think Miss May has a comment.
I was just wondering if there are plans throughout this deliberation to look at the difference in issues that would arise from having two elementary schools versus two buildings. I think it would be different issues for that configuration. Are there plans while this deliberation is going on to look at the possible differences in that configuration, the issues that would arise from it?
I think, regardless of what, I've worked at mostly high schools, but I've also worked at a pre-K through 7 elementary school and an 8 through 12 high school. And of course, we have a traditional model here: pre-K through 5, 6 through 8, and then 9 through 12. I grew up in a K through 7 model and an 8 through 12 high school with no middle school. There are, regardless of what, we can go to Russell County and see 3 or 4 different configurations of their elementary schools. I certainly realize that there will be different issues, different needs, different pedagogies and instructional models and tools and resources that you'll need if you do change the configuration. But we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel. It wouldn't be the first school division who had a primary and an intermediate school. So I think that if we do go to that model, we'll have lots of discussion about that. But I don't think it's going to be a big concern, because it's not like it's a brand new idea to public education.
Let me add too. Other than Mr. White, I've sat on this board since 2004, and we've had a lot of discussion and some painful processes of redistricting. But when we first started talking about this, we were talking about 2 K through 5s, and the new model of a possible K2 and a 3-5 has come up. And it's exciting to think about, if we do go to that, having all your resources in one building and having all your teachers, all your first grade teachers teaming together and pooling their resources and pooling their, being able to tag team and help each other out. Now we got them scattered over 4 buildings, so there is some benefit as you look at that model. There's a lot of other things we can look at over, which way we're going to go. But let me just say this: we have this, and I hope everybody will appreciate this. The board, everything we've ever tackled since I've been on here, we have gone out and talked to parents and teachers and the community, and we every time we've gone through redistricting, we've gone to all these schools, and it's an emotional. Anytime you make a decision, whether you're closing a school or sending kids to a different school, it's a change for people, and change is not easy. And we all are comfortable, and we love our community schools, but things have changed, and it's time to change again. No matter where we go on this school, people are going to be affected. People are going to be, it's going to change their behavior. It's going to change their course of direction. And I would just urge that this opportunity doesn't come around too often in a city that has the challenges ours has.